Ivermectin is a type of horse paste that should only be used on horses to make them better. I can say that, but the FDA, you mustn't say it anymore because you've oversaid it and now you've had to be banned. See how you like it. Hello there, you awakening wonders. Thanks for joining us on this voyage to truth and freedom. Remember, you can click the link in the description and become a supporter of our movement where we do our level best to tell the truth in environments of treachery and deceit. For example, today we're talking about Ivermectin and how now the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, can no longer call it a horse paste. But it's a bit late now, isn't it? They've really horse pasted it off to within an inch of its life. I mean, do you remember that moment when all you could really hear on the news, hello, welcome to the news, Ivermectin, yeah, don't really think about it. Well, it's a thing. It's horse paste, okay? And don't go using it like that Joe Rogan to make yourself better if you get an illness, which is definitely a political thing now, not a private medical matter.
One of those drugs he mentioned, Ivermectin, is something more often used to deworm horses.
When you have a horse deworming medication that's discouraged by the government, that actually causes some people in this crazed environment we're in to actually want to try it.
Because for some reason, we're turning medicine into politics now, which seems weird when you reflect on it just a short while later, especially as we now know the whole thing was a mad and ridiculous pack of lies. So now let's have a look at why the FDA are not allowed to call Ivermectin a horse paste anymore and why we couldn't refer to it as a Nobel Prize winning anti-parasitic drug in the first place when that's what it was.
The FDA has agreed to remove and stop reposting several social media messages suggesting ivermectin, a drug some doctors use to treat COVID, is intended for animals and not humans.
I like that because it sort of sounds like a harassment claim, doesn't it? You've got to stop and stop repeating. Okay, sorry, we won't. Can we just occasionally on a Saturday say it's a little bit of a paste for animals? No, not at all. Under no circumstances. Stop saying it. Paste for animals. What did you just say? I said it's a waste for cajigles.
The move settles a lawsuit filed by 3 doctors who accused the agency of hurting their medical practices. The lawsuit targeted not only the FDA, but the Department of Health and Human Services. The case was initially dismissed, citing the FDA's sovereign immunity. However, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit overturned the ruling. The court said the FDA's role is not to provide personalized medical advice.
Wow, that's amazing, isn't it? That's not the FDA's role even, to provide personal medicalized advice. They're meant to actually oversee clinical trials, regulate pharmaceutical companies, from whom they also receive their funding in significant part. That's not even their job. In fact, when you start thinking about all these groups, NIH, CDC, what are they really? They're not meant to be in charge of you, are they? They're meant to be your advisors. It's odd how tyranny works now. It's colourful, it's lurid, there's songs, there's dances, but at the end of it, you are getting told what to do. And if you try doing what you want to do, even if it's not outside of the law in normal ways, you'll be annihilated. I mean, all Joe Rogan actually did was when I got COVID actually, and what I did was these things. What have you ever done ever? That's a horse paste. Let's look at what you've done online. We will find a way to destroy you. And now the FDA mustn't call it a horse paste anymore. It's simply not true. It's misleading. It's misinformation. Ironically, disinformation.
As a result, the FDA will now stop publishing a consumer update titled Why You Should Not Use Ivermectin to Prevent COVID-19.
And we'd prefer that you use drugs that are patented, even if there are all sorts of adverse events and possibly even excess deaths that we're frantically trying to conceal right now.
And remove all related social media posts within 21 days. Ivermectin is approved for both animal and human use.
There are loads of things though, like antibiotics and headache tablets. You don't have to get all hysterical about it. It's just like an animal's not that different from a human. We're 98% identical to a chimpanzee. We're 60% identical to an earthworm. Why are we all getting so excited?
And is used to treat some parasitic infections. However, the FDA still does not recommend it for COVID treatment, saying there is danger of excessive doses.
Trying to get that last bit in. But I will say, even though it's not a horse paste, you could take too much of it and then your butt would clog up and no one would like you. And I can't stop being childish about ivermectin.
Ivermectin advocates celebrated the ruling, and independent presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. claimed the FDA's stance is biased against low-cost therapies.
Oh, well, there you go. That's the root of it, isn't it? Ivermectin's been out of patent for years and years and years, and we'd much rather you took this stuff. Is this stuff profitable? Is this stuff effective? Can you show me the data? Can I have access to completely unredacted information when it comes to this subject? Can you tell me about the profits? Can you tell me about the funding? Can you tell me about the adverse events, the excess deaths, the origin of the virus in the first place, and whether there's any US involvement? I can't answer any of those questions, and neither can I say what I'd really like to say, which ivermectin is a...
The FDA declined to comment on Kennedy's claims.
Kennedy's claims like that the pharmaceutical industry exists to make profit. That's what he's claiming. You maniac conspiracy theorist! You're lucky your surname's Kennedy or you've been in a lot of trouble.
But again said clinical trial data does not support ivermectin's use to treat COVID.
This is the classic moment now in conspiracy world because this was when Joe Rogan was much mocked and maligned at an international level because he took his own course of action when it comes to his private business and then had the audacity to have a successful podcast. What I didn't know until just now is that Dr. Pierre, Kory, guest on our show and vital voice when it comes to ivermectin, COVID treatment and medicine and ethics more broadly, was the one that told Joe Rogan to take ivermectin, which is rather like telling JFK to get a convertible.
Bro, do I have to sue CNN?
I don't know, do you?
They're making shit up. They keep saying I'm taking horse dewormer. I literally got it from a doctor. It's an American company. Mm-hmm. They won the Nobel Prize in 2015 for use in human beings.
Yeah.
And CNN is saying I'm taking horse dewormer.
Yeah, what? So
They must know that that's a lie.
Well, there's a lot of people saying it.
Right, but a lot of people can say it.
Okay.
Like the internet says it, who cares?
sure,
But CNN is saying it.
This is already like a sort of beautiful, nostalgic piece. It's only probably a couple of years ago, that, isn't it? But I feel like I'm almost watching the moon landings. Let's not get into that. Okay, let's have a look at Dr. Pierre Kory's writing on this subject. He seems to be a voice that we can trust because he's not a stooge of the establishment or a corporate slut? I don't know, what word do you want to use? Dr. Pierre Kory, the horse dewormer PR campaign involved coordinated and sequentially timed actions between the FDA, CDC, AMA, APHA and corporate-controlled media, i.e. late-night hosts, news broadcast, newspapers, etc. It really was that extensive, wasn't it? I saw sort of people dressed up as Joe Rogan. Probably there was a dance or something, Don Lemon. I mean, it was just so mad. And it's like, you're sort of told to forget about it, but it's not because you want to go on about it for its own sake even. It's actually, it was revealing. And then you can track what's happening now based on that. Clearly, the goal of the campaign was to convince the public that ivermectin was a dangerous and ineffective horse dewormer. Horse dewormer. No, FDA, I can say it, you can't. In the wake of that campaign, pharmacies stopped filling valid legal prescriptions and hospitals removed ivermectin from their formularies. They really went to town on it like it was Satanic Verses or my videos on Netflix. Get that stuff out of there! Never had an FDA-approved drug, one of the, if not the safest prescribed medications in history, ever been vilified or restricted to this extent. Just like hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin had to be stopped. The FDA's role in that campaign started with the posting of the Below tweet on August 21st, 2021, a week after the report on the Below left came out showing a massive rise in ivermectin prescriptions in the US during the deadly Delta wave. So let's have a look at that graphic. So what they said is, you are not a horse, you are not a cow, seriously y'all, stop it. So that's what they did. It's like, hold on, this drug's been used for many years for a variety of purposes, but were some of those purposes horse dewormer? Yeah, I suppose so. So what if we just say that it's only a horse dewormer and tell people that if they take it, it means that they're a horse also? Of course, a horse, of course a horse. It rhymes. Let's make it a policy. The rise in prescribing terrified the COVID cartel because it threatened the global vaccine market north of $100 billion. It's as simple as that. It also threatened the markets for all the competing pricey patented pipeline pharmaceuticals like remdesivir and Paxlovid, molnupiravir, and the monoclonal antibodies, also massive global markets in the many billions. It's like when some piece of IP becomes available. Hey, wait a minute, all the Beatles music's available for everyone now. Yesterday. Cut it! Pharma's greatest weapon to attack ivermectin is the FDA. Pharma, and especially Pfizer, has near complete control of the FDA and the CDC and the NIH. Not that you'd ever know it from the tough time they're given by those bureaucrats over at the FDA. Pfizer, how and when would you like this drug released? Now and expensively? And what would you like us to do with this information about your product? Oh, well, get that black pen, see, and cross out, heart attack, that's gotta go. Turbo, that's out. Increased risk, that could go. There it is, a black piece of paper. Oh, that's beautiful. I can put this on my lunch pack. But the FDA couldn't do it all by themselves, so they called in the CDC to do some dirty work. 5 days after the FDA tweet, the CDC sent out a warning advisory to all the state medical boards, which was then forwarded to every licensed physician in the country. Here it is. This is an official CDC health advisory. Rapid increase in ivermectin prescription and reports of severe illness associated with use of products containing ivermectin to prevent or treat. 3 days after the CDC memo, they then trotted Fauci out on national TV. And he says this, this. Don't do it. There's no evidence whatsoever that it works. It could potentially have toxicity. There's no clinical evidence that indicates this works. What I think would be a fun game is to apply those exact words to another popular product around that time. Don't do it. There's no evidence whatsoever that it works. For example, on preventing transmission. It could potentially have toxicity. That protein spike is going to stay there, right? There's no clinical evidence that indicates that this works because we redacted all of the evidence.
148 pages. The entire thing is redacted.
Curious business, isn't it? Then 2 days after that, they got 3 major professional societies to call for an end to using ivermectin. So here that is. AMA, APHA, ASHP call for immediate end to prescribing, dispensing and use of ivermectin to prevent or treat COVID-19 outside clinical trials. And then they called in for mass media firepower. This is brilliant, isn't it? Looking at it this way shows sort of how it actually went down and how it worked. In the middle of it, it was just like, what? Why is this happening? So why is this important? I don't understand. And now you can see how that's replicated. We've done previous stories on the Trusted News Initiative, which shows how various broadcast media have relationships and a shared agenda. This is a brilliant example of how that works, but it's not the only one, because whenever there's an agenda, whether it's don't report on this war, take out this dissenting voice, whatever it is, they will operate in this way. You'll see this pattern. I believe, without evidence, that the tweet and the entire PR campaign was devised and executed by Weber Shandwick, the massive PR firm that simultaneously works for the CDC, Moderna, and Pfizer. At the risk of foreshadowing, I also believe, without evidence, that the entire reason the FDA settled this case is because discovery would be severely damaging to many people involved. Wow, they settled so that it didn't come out. If there was a massive trial, you'd have to start looking at what this was all coordinated. And now because we're like, oh, I don't want to talk about COVID anymore, like Bill Hicks' joke, quit talking about Kennedy, man. It's a long time ago. Forget about it. Okay, don't bring up Jesus to me, as he used to say, the great Bill Hicks.
Taking over of democracy by totalitarian government, let it go.
So what he's saying is that if this thing's settled out of court, people will just forget it, and people are just tired and exhausted, and energy prices and shrinkflation and all those problems that we suffer every day. We won't have time to remember that we were all lied to and manipulated on a massive scale in a variety of ways during that extraordinary period. That tweet went absolutely viral and became the FDA's most popular tweet in history. I believe that tweet was the opening shot that completely turned from what had been isolated battles against ivermectin into an all-out war. Like, why aren't they bothered about us eating processed food? They'd let us eat like processed food and corn syrup and sugars and seed oils and stuff that are causing cancer and heart disease. Like, why are they not going, stop eating it, stop it? Is the difference possibly that they'll let us do things that are bad for us, that are profitable, and not let us do things that may or may not be bad for us, that are not profitable? What's the line? Where's the line here? It doesn't seem to be looking after you and loving you. As we all know, the FDA's opinion was misleading and deceptive. Once a drug receives FDA approval for a disease, it can legally be used to treat any other disease, a practice called off-label prescribing. The FDA knows this full well. They knew that no physician needed a COVID-specific approval or authorization. So this was a time where extraordinary legislation, regulations, and practices became normalized. Why? Know that 20% of outpatient prescriptions and 30% of inpatient prescriptions are written in this off-label manner. So it's just a normal, regular practice. It happens all the time. And the FDA literally champions the practice for very sound reasons. And here is them doing just that. I think it's important to note this page above was last edited in 2018. I suspect they will disappear that page soon. Yeah, because, right, their agenda's changed. Basically, many medicines have multiple pharmacologic mechanisms of action and so can be useful in different diseases. Ivermectin probably has the broadest applicability of any medicine that I'm aware of. Anti-parasitic, antiviral, antibacterial, anti-inflammatory, and anti-tumor. As Professor Satoshi Omura, the Nobel Prize-winning discoverer of the drug, said in his Nobel acceptance speech, it truly is a wonder drug. Well, we think it might be a bit of a... Now, beyond the tweet, the FDA also went on the warpath across all other major social media. Although the initial salvo started on social media, it didn't end there. 4 months later, in another attempt to influence the practice of medicine, they sent letters to the Federation of State Medical Boards and the American Board of Pharmacy. Now, when the lawsuit was first filed, obviously the FDA moved immediately to dismiss, and they did so by arguing that they cannot be sued because they have sovereign immunity. That lets you know a great deal about how the FDA sees itself, like a type of king. We've got sovereign immunity. Can't just claim sovereign immunity, can you? Can you? Well, they did.
Diplomatic immunity. It's just been revoked.
fact.
You can't make this stuff up. What you also can't make up is that the district court judge agreed with them and dismissed the case. Amazing nexus of interests all intertwining here. But lawyer Clayland Boyd and Gray immediately appealed the case because he knew that although federal law actually does give the government immunity against legal actions, there are some exceptions, such as ultra vires, a term describing when an official acts outside their authority. Plaintiffs challenging the acts must show that the official was acting without any authority whatever, or without any tolerable basis for the exercise of authority. Boyden's decision to appeal was spot on because the appeals court judge was truly miffed at the FDA and immediately ruled that the plaintiffs had standing and that the lawsuit could proceed. This was a huge win back then in our court of public opinion, largely because the FDA lawyer had to admit in open court that physicians did indeed have every right to prescribe ivermectin off-label for COVID. It gets even better because in the appeals court opinion, the judge went off on the FDA with the following statements. FDA can inform, but it has identified no authority allowing it to recommend consumers to stop taking medicine. That's not part of its job. It's just decided it was going to start doing that. FDA is not a physician. It has authority to inform, announce, and apprise, but not to endorse, denounce, or advise. So that's amazing, isn't it? They can tell you, we think this. They can announce, hello, and they can apprise. But they can't go, that's good, or that isn't good, or you should do this. That's beyond their authority. My God, it shows you that we sort of almost like naive, adorable children don't even really know what agencies are supposed to be doing. Like democracy can start doing stuff that it's not meant to do, or the government can start doing stuff that it's not allowed to do, or its regulatory bodies can start saying and doing things that are well beyond its remit, and we're just like, oh, okay, well, we don't want to be like a bunch of horses, so I guess we'll just do what you told us, huh? But actually, we should have gone, what else has got to do? You get out of here. Oh, okay, but you realise it might be... Even tweet-sized doses of personalised medical advice are beyond FDA's statutory authority. That is good, isn't it? They're not supposed to tweet you advice. Now that the FDA has to take down every single one of their posted and or published advice against using ivermectin in COVID. Wow. We've got to just take all of that back. We've got to pretend that whole thing didn't happen. All of the sketches, all of the skits, all of the bombast, all of the attacks, we've got to sort of unravel it from our mind. And remember, Joe Rogan's bafflement there, like, should I sue CNN? Are they supposed to be saying that? Well, we know why they said it, because the FDA approved it. Big Pharma are their biggest advertisers. There was a government edict to regulate and centralise authority at that time. That's why this has been such a confusing event for us all. However, it's my opinion that because the case ended in settlement, we cannot claim total victory because it allows the FDA to continue to lie with statements like this one today, claiming they are not guilty of wrongdoing. FDA has not admitted any violation of law or any wrongdoing, disagreeing with the plaintiff's allegation that the agency exceeded its authority in issuing the statements challenged in the lawsuit, and it stands by its authority to communicate with the public regarding the products it regulates, the spokesperson said. And look how they had to sort of tiptoe through that set of language earlier, like they couldn't go, because we can inform and we can announce and apprise, but we cannot endorse or denounce and advise. And we did do some endorsing and we did do some denouncing when we did a lot of advising. And that's how the law works. How can anyone have any trust in the judiciary? How can anyone have any trust in the media? How can anyone have any trust in the state when we see how they work together? I bet even now, where depending on where you're watching this, if you're watching it on Instagram, there'll be something under there. If you're watching it on YouTube, there'll be something under there. If you're watching it, looking at it at X, there won't be something under there. And if you're watching it on our home Rumble, there might be some crazy ads and some crazy comments, but there'll be nothing else under there, because this mentality is prevailing still now. When you report on this subject, they're still trying to control it. They're introducing different regulations to control comparable things. And you can hear in the FDA, they're not like, sorry about that, we went totally mad and said something was a horse paste, even though it's something we ourselves had approved of. And indeed, the off-label prescribing is a practice that we ourselves endorse. We went all mad for some reason, and I can't remember what it was. Oh yeah, it's money, isn't it? It's money and corruption and the opportunity to regulate, and maybe even, we don't know for sure, because we don't say things that we can't corroborate, more insidious things than that. We'll have to keep looking. It reveals so much to us. That's why we're still reporting on this story, because it shows us who we are and who we're not and how we're governed. But I trust the wider public, says Pierre, Kory, can see right through such a statement. I mean, who will believe that they can claim innocence when they were forced to settle? You only settle when you know you're going to lose in court, or you cannot risk going through the discovery process. Either way, the plaintiffs, Boyd and Gray and Associates, and the FLCCC, Frontline COVID-19 Critical Care Alliance, landed a big victory against one of our most captured federal health agencies, a win against tyranny, really. Here's a post from RFK. Ivermectin is not an exceptional case. The FDA FDA is biased against many low-cost generic and or natural therapies with low profit potential? Could it be because half its funding comes from big pharma? That's RFK responding to the below post announcing the FDA's requirement to get rid of all those posts. And perhaps we'll think about medication more broadly in your country and how it is prescribed and if it's expensive or not, and whether or not competitive practices are encouraged, or perhaps even more broadly than that. Is the industry, odd word, of health focused on patient healthcare and wellness of individuals, or is it focused on profit? And once you've answered that question, you can answer some more questions about the way that the legacy media report. Are they on your side, or are they on the side of a kind of nexus of interests that include the state and corporations? And then you can talk about the judiciary. Is it corruptible? You can ask yourself those questions, but not for long, because or even now, while we're speaking, there are sets of forces enclosing all around us, on me in particular, and on you specifically, to ensure, just even take a simple example like Instagram, political speech, no thank you. You think that doesn't include this? Think that that doesn't essentially mean information that would encourage you to become discerning, agitated, and angry about the way that you are treated by the powerful. That's essentially what that means, and it will be masked in bureaucracy, it will be hidden from your view, and instead what will be put in front of you is a lot of old twaddle. But hopefully you and I and us together can continue to create relationships and participate in a movement that opposes this madness. That's why we need you to click the link in the description and join us for an additional exclusive video every single week. The opportunity to participate in conversations like our one with Dr. Ladapo, who answers a bunch of questions around this in a fascinating way. It's already up on our Awaken channel. You can go look at it right now if you want to. More important than any of that, if you can, please God, oh please, stay free. Hey, thanks for watching. If you want to see more uncensored content where free speech can flourish, join our live stream. Click the link right here to watch the next video if you want to, or become a member of a growing movement. Download the Rumble app and you'll be informed every time we make a new piece of content. Stay free.